Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, and this is my compatriot, Ruud.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck you can build without breaking the bank. Now today's deck is going to wipe the board until you will be the player with the single most powerful creatures on the battlefield. As with all decks, there's just one additional build rule, and that is that all cards need to be under $1 in price, with just one exception, and it is our commander. So let's take a look at our commander.
And do we have an awesome commander for you today? We have Jhoira of the Ghitu for 3 mana. It's a 2/2 human wizard, and she has a very special ability. For 2 mana, we get to exile a non-land card from our hand. So non-land is, it could be a creature, it could be sorcery, it could be instant, artifact, doesn't matter. And we can put 4 time counters on it, on this exiled card. If you do, it gains suspend. Now, what is suspend? Suspend means that it has a number of time counters on it, in this case, 4. At the beginning of our upkeep, on each of our turns, we're going to take down one of those counters, and on the turn that we remove the last one of those counters, we cast that card for free, and it enters with haste if it's a creature. This means the role of Jhoira is going to be to suspend for 2 mana really big, fat, suspendable creatures, which normally would be very expensive to cast, let's say 7, 8, or 9 mana creatures, and we're going to be suspending them for 2 mana, putting 4 time counters on them, and then 4 turns later we're going to be casting them for free. Really, really cool. In the meantime, staying alive with board wipes. Now that's not the only thing that we're going to need to make this deck work, so let's have a look at the cards that we need. Ruud.
Well, we need 24 suspendable cards, so these are creatures. Then we have 15 control cards to control the board before those creatures enter. Then we have 9 defensive cards to make sure we stay alive long enough when we're not wiping. And then we have 13 utility cards, which will do some different stuff we will see later. And of course we need 38 land cards.
Exactly. What is the ideal turn progression, Ruud?
Well, most likely turn 1 we will do nothing, because we don't have 1 mana spells we would like to use that turn. Then turn 2 we will cast some defensive card. Turn 3 the commander will enter the battlefield. Turn 4 we will cast 2 suspendable cards. Then turn 5 we will just use some control to be wiping the board to make sure we will stay alive until our suspended cards will enter. And then turn 6 onward we will have some draw and some additional control. Maybe suspend some more, maybe hard casting the creatures we would suspend if it was earlier in the game.
Yeah, what's also important to remember is that in a meta where there's a lot of spot removal, it could be that you're going to be casting Jhoira on turn 5, because as her ability is not a tap ability, means you can use it on the turn that she comes in, even though she has summoning sickness. So on turn 5, if you have 5 mana, you can cast Jhoira, then immediately pay 2 mana to exile a big fatty and put 4 time counters on it. And then of course you could always still cast an instant speed removal on it, but it doesn't matter because you will definitely be able to suspend that card. What's also important to remember about Jhoira's ability is that it is dependent on the type of card that you cast when you can suspend that card. In essence, if you're going to be suspending an instant spell, you can use Jhoira's ability whenever you want, but if you're going to be suspending big fat creatures, which is what we're going to be doing in this deck, you can only do that in your first or second main phase. All right, let's have a look at the thing that makes this deck so much fun, and that is the big fat suspendable cards. We divided the suspendable cards into land monsters, sea monsters, and of course sky monsters. We're going to start with our land monsters, and the first one is Frost Titan. For 6 mana, we have a 6/6 giant. And whenever this creature becomes a target of a spell or ability our opponent controls, we counter that spell or ability unless our opponent pays an additional 2 mana. It's pretty cool. On top of that, when this creature enters the battlefield or when Frost Titan attacks, we get to tap target permanent our opponent controls, and it doesn't untap in their next untap step. Pretty cool.
So essentially when it enters with haste, when it's suspended of course, we do this 2 times the first turn it will enter the battlefield.
Yeah, once when it enters and once when it attacks.
Exactly. The next one is Inferno Titan, so the enemy of the Frost Titan. It's a 6/6 creature, of course it's 6 mana, and when it enters it will do 3 damage divided as you choose among any number of creatures and or players, and it also does that when it attacks. On top of that, it will have fire breathing for just 1 red mana.
Yeah.
Could be nice.
Yeah, we don't usually use it for that.
No.
Mostly it's the fact that it comes in, it's attacking with haste for 6 mana, for 6 damage, and also doing an additional 6 damage when it comes in and attacks. Pretty awesome. Then we have Charmbreaker Devils for 6 mana, a 4/4. States that at the beginning of your upkeep, return target instant or sorcery, return a random instant or sorcery card from your graveyard back to your hand. That is really powerful because we have some instant and sorcery speed card draw, and more importantly, we have a lot of removal spells in the form of board wipes. And if we can get a couple of those back later on in the game, that is really powerful. Additionally, it also has the special ability that when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it does get +4/+0 to the end of turn, but we're not going to be using that to its fullest effect in this deck.
No. Then we have Bane of Balaget for 7 mana with a 7/5 with the new form of Annihilator. When it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents he or she controls.
Yeah, very nasty for being a 7/5. On top of that, it's very important to remember that this is when the creature attacks, which means it's before blockers are declared, so they first need to get rid of 2 things before they can even think about blocking Bane of Balaget. And considering it's a 7/5, it'll probably kill whatever is blocking it.
True.
Then we have Breaker of Armies for 8 mana. We get a 10/8, massive. And all creatures able to block Breaker of Armies do so. In essence, on the turn that it comes out of suspension, it's got haste, you attack immediately towards your opponent, and you're most likely going to wipe all their creatures. Breaker of Armies probably won't survive that, but, you know, it's a nice little board wipe.
Could be a problem against a lot of commanders. For example, Jhoira would have a problem with this card. It will be removed by this card, of course, because it can't really tap itself. It doesn't have to attack either. Then we have Ulamog's Crusher for 8 mana. It's an 8/8 creature with Annihilator 2, which means when it attacks, a little bit the same as Bane of Balaget, but this time the player needs to sacrifice 2 permanents. Defending player that is, of course. This creature has to attack each turn if able.
But you'd be a fool to not want to. Then we have Hand of Emrakul for 9 mana. We get a 7/7 with Annihilator 1. A little bit worse than the hand. Than the Crusher. It also states that you can sacrifice 4 Eldrazi spawn, but we don't have any of those in this deck, so you can just ignore that. So Annihilator 1 for a 7/7 for 9, you might think, wow, too expensive for what it does. However, remember, we're also just going to be casting it for 2 mana in essence.
True. Then we have Artisan of Kozilek. Now we're talking for 9 mana. It's a 10/9 creature with Annihilator 2, and when it enters, when it's cast, which you will do, of course, with Jhoira when it's suspended, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So when they did remove a really big fatty early on in the game, when this card enters, you get to return that card to the battlefield.
Yeah, and what's also really cool to remember is that Jhoira's ability, when you suspend your cards, when you exile those cards, she's not casting them then. So people can't counter her ability as if it was casting a spell, because it is an ability, it's not casting a spell. But when the card comes out of being suspended, and it is being cast, so then it can be countered as well. That also means that the ability of Artisan of Kozilek, which states that when it is being cast, you get to do that, also triggers. Very cool. Those are the land creatures. Now let's have a look at the sea monsters. First one is Storm Surge Kraken for 5 mana. It's a 5/5 hexproof creature. And on top of that, it also has Lieutenant, which means that if Jhoira's on the battlefield, it's actually a 7/7, and if it gets blocked, we get to draw 2 cards. People don't want you to draw 2 cards, which also kind of makes it a 7/7 hexproof unblockable for only 5 mana. That is a really good deal.
Really nice. Then we have Colossal Will for 7 mana. It's a 5/5 Island Walk, a will of course. And when it attacks, so before blockers are declared, you get to exile target creature defending player controls until Colossal Will leaves the battlefield. So an Oblivion Ring each turn.
Sweet. Then we have Tromokratis for 7 mana. We get an 8/8 hexproof creature, although it loses hexproof when it's attacking or blocking. Additionally, it can't be blocked unless all creatures defending player controls block it. That means that it's not only the creatures that can block have to block, it's also all their creatures have to block to be able to block it. So if there is a creature that's tapped of theirs, that's one creature that can't block, which means none of them can block. In essence, again, it is going to be an 8/8 unblockable, do tons and tons of damage, and immune to sorcery speed spot removal.
The next one will be Trench Gorger. For 8 mana, it's a 6/6 trample creature, but when it enters, you may exile any number of land cards from your library, and this creature will become that number in power and toughness. So let's say you exile 20 land cards, this will be a 20/20 trample card. Insane, of course, which you will do in most cases, because when this card is cast, you will most likely have enough lands. You won't need any more because you can suspend stuff later on. And well, of course, when you exile a lot of cards you don't need anymore, you will have a bigger chance on drawing the cards you do want, which will be the fatties in most cases.
Exactly, does a lot of stuff, this card. Next is one of my favorites, Stormtide Leviathan. For 8 mana, we get a 8/8 Island Walk. On top of that, all lands are islands in addition to their other types, and creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. Now we have a couple of Island Walk creatures. We have a whole bunch of flyers on top of that. And Stormtide Leviathan has Island Walk itself, so you're going to be doing a lot of damage and shutting down a lot of other decks in the process, because a lot of other creatures don't have flying or Island Walk that our opponents have at that point in time. So really, really powerful, very good defensive card, and of course fits very nice as one of our sea monsters.
True. Of course, it has a little bit of drawback. It could shut down your Trench Gorger, which doesn't have Island Walk or flying, of course. But well, in almost any case, it will have a more severe effect on your opponents than it will have on you.
Exactly.
So very nice. The next one is Lorthos, the Tide Maker. For 8 mana, we get an 8/8 monster, sea monster. It's octopus. When it attacks, you may pay 8 generic mana. Generic, very good. And if you do, you get to tap up to 8 permanents, and those permanents don't untap during their controller's next untap steps. They say steps because it could be more than one opponent. It just means one untap step, one round of untap steps, of course. But next turn you could do it again and tap different permanents, or just tap the same ones. Yeah. Even if they are already tapped, they don't untap during their next untap step.
Exactly, and as this creature comes out of suspension, you're going to have all your mana still open. So there's a good chance you had 8 mana. When it comes in with haste, you pay those 8, and then immediately you're attacking, and immediately you're tapping things. It's really quite brutal, and if you can do that once and they don't have an answer for it, you can do it repeatedly. Pretty cool. Then we have Inkwell Leviathan for 9 mana. It is a 7/11. How big is that creature? That is a massive Leviathan. It has Island Walk, pretty sweet, so it's going to be able to attack if only Island Walk or flying creatures can attack. It also has Trample, that's nice because it has 7 power, and it also has Shroud, which means we can't target it, nobody can target it. It is immune to spot removal. And it's also immune to a lot of damage spells that damage a lot of creatures, because almost none of them do 11 points of damage. It's immune to so much, and it can do so much damage. I love it.
Except maybe Blasphemous Act, of course, but most,
yes.
Oh, that's the only one, I think.
That's the only one.
Yeah.
And Blasphemous Act can get rid of pretty much everything.
Yeah, true. Then we have Grozoth for 9 mana. It's a 9/9 defender creature. But when it comes into play, you may search your library for any number of cards that have converted mana cost 9. We will have 5 other cards that have that, including the Blasphemous Act we just talked about, and you get to put them into your hand, and of course then shuffle your library. What it can also do for 4 mana, Grozoth loses Defender until end of turn, so it will be a 9/9 creature without Defender. Pretty nice. It also has Transmute, but we're not going to talk about that right now.
Well, it's very simple. You can just pay 3 mana, discard this card, look for another card that's 9 mana. Very simple. You could look for Inkwell Leviathan, or you could look for Blasphemous Act. Most likely you're just going to suspend this card and then get the full benefit of drawing all those cards when it enters play.
I think so too.
Then we go to the Sky Monsters. I was going to say Sky Masters, but that would also work quite well. First one is Archetype of Imagination for 6 mana. We get a 3/2 little guy, and it states that all your creatures have flying and all your opponent's creatures lose flying and can't have flying. How awesome is that? Because that Stormtide Leviathan states that only creatures with flying can attack, and all our creatures are going to be flying, and none of our opponents are going to have flying, so that basically shuts them down almost entirely, which is lovely.
Very lovely. Then we have Steel Hellkite. For 6 mana we get a 5/5 flyer with Fire Breathing for 2 mana. not that nice, but could happen. And, well, we can pay X, and when we do that, destroy each non-land permanent, so not only creatures, each non-land permanent, with converted mana cost of exactly X, whose controller was dealt damage by Steel Hellkite that turn. Yeah. You can do that only once each turn, because else it will be really unfair. Well, really nice. It does need to get through, of course, and only defending players, creatures or permanents with converted mana cost, but really, really nice.
Exactly.
Especially against tokens.
That's you just pay 0 and all their tokens are gone. How awesome is that? Then we go to Hellkite Charger for 6 mana. It's a 5/5 flying haste. The haste doesn't really matter to us that much because it's going to come out of suspension with haste anyway. But it also states that when this guy attacks, we can pay 7 mana. If we do, we untap all our attacking creatures and we get another combat phase. That is going to be super brutal. If it comes out of suspension, we're still going to have all our mana. If we do have 7 or more mana, that's 2 combat phases right there.
Very nice. Then we have Flame Blast Dragon for 6 mana. It's a 5/5 flyer, and when it attacks, you may pay X and 1 red mana. If you do, Flame Blast Dragon deals X damage to target creature or player. Some spot removal.
Cool little fireball on a big dragon. Then we have Niv Mizzet, the Fire Mind for 6 mana. We get a 4/4 flyer. Whenever we draw a card, Niv Mizzet deals 1 damage to target creature or player. We can also tap it to draw a card. We've got some extra card draw spells in this deck as well, so there's a good chance that if Niv Mizzet on the battlefield, it's going to be doing multiple points of damage and as well drawing us extra card each turn. What's important to remember is probably you want to do this at the end of your opponent's turn, tap, draw a card, and then it untaps again in your turn, so you can always use it to block should you need to.
Very, very nice. Then we have Wind Reader Swings for 7 mana. It's a 3/7 flying creature, and whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. Very nice, of course, it does it itself.
Yeah. Then we go to Siege Dragon, also for 7 mana. We get a 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, destroy all walls our opponents control. Not too great. However, whenever Siege Dragon attacks, if our opponent controls no walls, then it deals 2 damage to all their creatures without flying. That is really nice against all these small little, maybe mana dorks, tokens, commanders with little toughness. It's going to be wiping all of those every time it attacks.
Then we have Tyrant's Familiar for 7 mana. It's a 5/5 flying haste. The haste could be redundant if we don't hardcast it, if it's suspended, of course. It also has Lieutenant, which means when we have our commander Jhoira on the battlefield, it will be a 7/7 creature, and this creature will deal 7 damage when it attacks to any creature or player. Now, only a creature defending player control. So you attack a player, and one of those creatures will get 7 damage from Tyrant's Familiar.
It is going to get emulated because 7 points of damage is insane to be doing every single turn when you're attacking, and also 7 damage to the face.
Of course.
Really cool. Well, those are land, sea, and air or sky monsters. Now what we're going to be using in the meantime to make sure that we don't die in the time that it takes for those creatures to come out of suspension, we're going to need some control. So let's have a look at the control spells. In order to make sure that we stay on the battlefield and we don't die to our opposition while we're waiting for our suspended cards to come out of suspension, we're going to need to have a lot of control over the battlefield. We divided those control cards into 3 types. The first one is damage wipe, so we're going to wipe the board by dealing a lot of damage to everybody, or a lot of creatures in either case. Then we've got bounce wipes, which means sometimes stuff is indestructible or can't be handled in such a way that we return them back to our opponent's hands. And last, we've got counter spells, which is of course always nice to have when people don't expect it. Let's have a look at the damage wipes first. Our first card is Star Storm for X and 2 red. It's an instant, and it deals X damage to each creature. Really simple, actually. Very nice that it's also instant speed, so we can use it in our end step of our opponent's turn before our turn starts. And it's also got Cycling 3, which means you get to pay 3 mana, discard this card, and draw a new card if we're really not in the mood for wiping. But to tell you the truth, I've always liked keeping this card in my hand, just in case.
Exactly. Then we have Sulphurous Blast for 4 mana. Sulphurous Blast deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. And if you cast it during your main phase, it deals 3 damage. Basically, you will want to cast it during your main phase, of course, because of the additional damage. But maybe 2 damage will be enough, so you could also cast it at the end of the last opponent's turn.
Yeah, nice little option. I think it's also handy to say, you'll notice that we use wipes that are not super expensive, because at the time we want to survive this game before our suspended cards come out of suspension, which means we're going to want to do that between turn 5 and 7 around that time. So
Yeah.
we don't want very expensive board wipes, because maybe we want to wipe and then suspend something, or the other way around. Let's have a look. Then we have Chain Reaction for 4 mana. It's a sorcery, and this one states that it deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. Usually everybody's going to have a couple of creatures at least, so it's going to be doing tons and tons of damage to all creatures, and it's pretty much going to wipe the board.
Exactly.
Also, very important to remember is that your suspended cards, all those creatures that you suspended, they're exiled actually, which means that they're not going to be affected by any board wipes.
Exactly, of course. Then we have Caldera Hellion. How do you say it?
Caldera Hellion.
Caldera Hellion, yeah. For 5 mana, it's a 3/3 creature with Devour 1. So when it comes into play, you can sacrifice any number of other creatures, and this will get an amount of +1/+1 counters on it equal to that amount. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature. So it would destroy itself unless you sacrifice another creature. A lot of times you will sacrifice Jhoira with this because you don't need her anymore. You've already cast your exiled your 2 suspendable cards with it, and it isn't needed anymore for the coming turns. And when it enters, it will die either way. So you will mostly sacrifice Jhoira, so this will survive as a 4/4 against its own 3 damage.
Exactly, and remember your opponent's probably will have nothing on the battlefield with 2 more great suspendable cards that are going to be coming out of suspension in a few turns. So it's a very threatening card. Then we have one of my favorite board wipe cards, and that is Blasphemous Act for 9 mana. It's a sorcery. It says Blasphemous Act costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Also, Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. Most of the time, you're going to be playing this for 1 red mana, which is of course insane.
Yeah, very, very nice, of course. Then we have Fade Away for 3 mana. It's a sorcery, and it states that for each creature, that creature's controller pays 1 or sacrifices a permanent, so they can choose any permanent they have. This is especially powerful, of course, against aggro decks. They will try to use all their mana in the first few turns of the game, and they won't have any mana left, so they will have to sacrifice either creatures or lands, which is going to be devastating for them, and for you it's not going to be a problem.
No.
Maybe you will sacrifice Jhoira, maybe you don't even want to do that, maybe it's not even necessary.
No, at this time when you're casting these, you've probably got at least 4 mana, so you can pay this for 3 and then pay 1 mana to keep Jhoira alive.
And this even works later on in the game when you are ready for it, your opponents are not ready for it, they can't prepare for it. You only have your 2 or 3 very big fatties, you have 6 mana, you cast this, your opponents have maybe 1, maybe 2 mana, and they have a lot of creatures. Most of their permanents will die.
Decisions, and usually you'll be in a very good position after that. Then we go to the bounce wipes. The first one is Whelming Wave for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. It says return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Kraken, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Really cool. We actually have a bunch of sea creatures, and a bunch of those are Krakens and Leviathans. So also Octopuses, which means that those creatures actually can stay on the battlefield, even if even if they were already on the battlefield before, and usually we're going to be casting Whelming Wave while our cards are suspended, so it won't affect them anyway.
True. Then we have Washout for 4 mana. It states it's a sorcery that states that return all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hand. So usually you won't be wanting to choose red or blue, of course, because you also have that color, but maybe it's necessary. Most cases you will choose green, white, or black, of course.
Exactly. Also because green and white are colors where there's a lot of tokens in, for example.
True.
And we don't like to get attacked. When we're with Jhoira, we don't like to get attacked with a lot of small creatures in the beginning of the game that are being populated, being doubled. So these kind of wipes are really nice to at least have one of these in your starting hand, and then later on get another one. Next card is Aetherrise for 4 mana. It's an instant. It states return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. Sometimes we're going to have to leave our mana open, and when we do, people can always think, oh my god, what if the Jhoira player has Aetherrise in their hand and they're going to return everything back to my hand? It's going to be brutal. And actually every time I've cast this, it's always been to a devastating effect towards our position.
And if we don't have Aetherrise, we might have either Spouts for 5 mana.
Either one, right?
Either one. For each attacking creature, its owner puts it on the bottom or top of his or her library. Pretty much the same.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit nastier even.
Yeah,
I would say, because they have to draw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we go to Aether Gale for 3 mana as a sorcery. Return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. It's multiplayer, it's commander, which means there are going to be 6 things which we're going to want to return. And the great thing is we can hit artifacts, we can hit enchantments, we can hit creatures with this, and only for 5 mana being able to return 6 things back to their owner's hand is, yes, it's basically a board wipe.
Yeah. Then we have Devastation Tide. For 5 mana, we get to return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. So we will do that when our big fatties are suspended, so they are exiled. It also has Miracle Cast. When you may cast it when you draw it immediately. You have to show, of course, that you drew this card, and it will only cost you 2 mana.
Yeah.
Might be nice. You may even not need it, I think, but still.
I don't think I've ever cast it for its Miracle Cost. It wasn't really necessary. Just keep it in your hand and cast it when it's actually the most opportune moment for you. Those are the bounce wipes. Then we move on to the counter spells. The first one is Dream Fracture for 3 mana. It's an instant. Obviously, it's a counter spell. Counter target spell. Its controller draws a card, and you get to draw a card. You may think, hey, wait a second. Our opponent gets to draw a card. Yeah, and you also get to draw a card. Plus, you just got rid of something very critical, which was deemed worthy to counter spell, and they're just going to draw a card. It could be anything at all, and it could actually be something very useless as well. Most importantly, it's not the thing that you just countered.
Yeah, very nice. Then we have Dismiss. For 4 mana, we get to counter target spell and draw a card. So this time your opponent does not draw a card for 1 additional mana.
Yeah, and then we have Contradict for 5 mana, so for 1 additional mana. On top of that, counter target spell, and you get to draw a card. It's just slightly worse, but still good enough to include. Those are the cards that are going to be able to give us a lot of control over the battlefield, especially in the early turns of the game. However, at the very, very beginning of the game, it's also nice to just have a solid defense when you don't have a lot of cards, or you don't want to do board wipes, for example. So let's have a look at the defense cards.
So we've divided defensive cards into Scry cards and Discourage cards. The first one is Augur of Bolas. For 2 mana we get a 1/3 card. And when it enters the battlefield we get to look at the top 3 cards of our library. We may reveal an instant or sorcery card and put it into our hand. Could work out pretty nicely. We have some instant sorceries we really like, some board wipes. If not, it's still a 1/3 in the early stages of the game.
Yeah, it's not technically Scry. We just called these cards Scry because they're little guys with big butts that we can use to block with early on, and they give us a little bit of card selection, I suppose. Next card is Omen Speaker for 2 mana. It's a 1/3. When Omen Speaker enters the battlefield, Scry 2. Well, there you go. There's a Scry card.
Very nice. Then we have Sigilled Starfish. For 2 mana, it's a 0/3 card, and we get to tap it to Scry 1. So a lot of card selection. Very nice early on in the game, but of course also later on in the game.
Yeah. Then we have a couple of good defensive cards that are going to discourage our opponents from attacking us, which is nice because they're going to attack each other. First card is Fogbank for 2 mana, a 0/2 defender and flying, and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and by Fogbank. Really handy because it doesn't matter how big the creature is, if it doesn't have trample, it's not getting through.
Exactly. Then we have another Discourage card. Seacoast Drake for 2 mana, it's a 1/3 flying creature. Just simple.
Yeah, it's not too exciting, but you know what? On turn 2, it gets the job done.
Yeah.
Then we have Kajin of the Vanishing Touch. Excuse me. For 2 mana, it's a 0/3 defender. And whenever Kajin of the Vanishing Touch blocks a creature, return that creature to its owner's hand at the end of combat. Even if Kajin would die from the attack, you're going to put something really critical back into their hand, and people probably don't want that.
Yeah. Then we have a little bit the same card, Wall of Tears. For 2 mana, if Wall of Tears blocks any creatures, return each of those creatures to their owner's hand at end of combat.
Cool. Aetherplasm is next for 4 mana. It's a 1/1 illusion. It states that whenever Aetherplasm blocks a creature, you may return Aetherplasm to its owner's hand. If you do, you may put a creature card from your hand into play, blocking that creature. That is actually a really nice trait because people will see this card. They know that you have a lot of really big, expensive fatties in your hand. And they think, okay, I'm gonna attack, and Aetherplasm is gonna block, but I don't even know what they're gonna put for free onto the battlefield. Yeah. Probably gonna kill my creature, and on top of that, they're gonna have that at the beginning of the turn. They can attack with it. No, thank you. I'll attack somebody else.
Then we have Dissipation Field. It's an enchantment for 4 mana, and whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. Really nice against tokens. Of course, the damage will be dealt, and after that they will go back to the owner's hands. But still, well, it's a real big bummer, especially if there are other players on the field. Nobody wants to kill you because all their creatures get returned and the other opponent will kill them.
Yeah, exactly. So those are actually the cards that are going to be keeping us alive in the first turns of the game. Then we have some cards which are going to help us with the utility. And with the utility, we're talking about some cards which are going to help us with removing suspend counters and getting some extra draw. So let's have a look at the utility cards. We divided the utility cards into cards which help us remove suspend counters and draw cards. We're going to look at our first card for the suspend, and that is Rift Elemental. For 1 red, we get a 1/1 guy. And for 2 mana, we get to remove a time counter from a suspended permanent we control. And then Rift Elemental gets +2/+0 to the end of turn. We don't really care about making it big. We're not going to really be attacking with it because we might lose it. But the point is that for 2 mana, we get to remove a suspend counter, and that is going to be huge.
It is going to be huge, especially when you suspend a card turn 4, or 2 cards of course. Then turn 5 they will remove a suspend counter, and this one will get to remove 2 more. So turn 6 you will have that creature already. If it's a 9 mana creature, this is insane of course.
Yeah. Really.
Then we have Clock Spinning. For 1 blue mana we get to choose a counter on target permanent or suspended card, so it doesn't even have to be your own card, and remove the counter from the permanent. Or put another one of those counters on it. Well, of course we're going to remove those, especially the suspend counters. And on top of that, for 3 we could buy back this card. So if we cast it for 4 mana, we will return it to our hand.
Yeah, pretty sweet. You're almost always going to be trying to cast this for 4, except in the most dire of situations, so that you can do it every turn. Then we have Time Crafting for X and red. We get to choose one, remove X time counters from target suspended permanent, or add that many to, remove X counters from target permanent or suspended cards. Sorry, I forgot. You can also do permanent, just like with the clock spinning, or put that many on permanent or suspended card. This one's actually super awesome because you're going to be able to remove all the time counters in one go.
In one go. Just for 5 mana you'll get to remove 4, and you don't even have to remove 4. It will only be 3 after the first time you cast it. So with 4 mana, remove all time counters.
Sweet.
Then we have Time Bender. For 1 blue mana, it's a 1/1 creature, and when it's turned face up, you can choose one, remove 2 time counters from target permanent or suspended card, or put 2 counters on a card. Well, of course you can cast this for 3, its morph cost will be just 1 blue, and if you cast it for 3 it will be a 2/2 creature, and you get to morph it for 1 blue, and then this happens as I just stated.
Yeah, so basically for 4 mana you're going to be removing 2 time counters as a surprise.
True.
Which is pretty cool. Then we have Fury Charm for 2 mana, choose one, either destroy target artifact, target creature gets +1/+1 and trample until the end of turn, or remove 2 time counters from target permanent or suspended card. A lot of these cards were, I already was stumbling over the other card because of the various different options of adding suspend counters on a permanent suspended card. Basically, all these cards you're going to be wanting to remove suspend counters. That's it. So just look for that.
That's it, yeah. Then we have Jhoira's Time Bug. For 2 mana we get a 1/2 creature, insect, and we can tap it to remove a time counter from a card.
Yeah, exactly. Again, either permanent or suspended card, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. All of these cards just read, you're going to be removing time counters to make sure that your suspended cards come in super quick. Last one is Ship and Sand Mage. For 4 mana, we get a 3/2. When it comes into play, we can either choose one, either remove 2 time counters from target permanent or suspended card, or put 2 time counters on target permanent or suspended card. And we can also suspend it itself for 1 red, and then it gets suspend 4. You're not going to be doing that. Those are the suspend ones. So now we're going to look at the draw cards. Ruud, what's the first one?
The first one is Cerebral Vortex. For 3 mana we get an instant, and we get to draw 2 cards. Then this card deals damage equal to the number of cards we drew that turn. You could also cast it on an opponent. Well, he's going to draw cards, but he will lose life from drawing them. So it could be used when they just have 3 life, for example.
Yeah, or somebody did something crazy and they draw 18 cards.
Could be.
You could cast this, which would be really nasty. Usually what I like to do is cast this at the end of my opponent's step, because then I only lose 2 life because I only draw. Whereas if you do it in your own turn, you also have to count the card that you drew at the beginning of your upkeep. Then we have Keep Watch for 3 mana, also an instant. We get to draw a card for each attacking creature. You know, maybe we don't have 8 or Eyes, but when we have this, somebody's attacking us with 6 creatures. Still draws us 6 cards.
Very nice. Then we have Fact or Fiction. For 4 mana, we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our library, and an opponent can separate them into 2 piles. We choose one of those piles to put into our hand and the other into our graveyard.
Yeah, and usually we're going to see if we can end up having 3 cards. That's probably going to give us the best advantage. Then we have Steam Augury for 4 mana, essentially the same card, instant speed, except in this case we have to make 2 piles, and we choose an opponent to tell us which one of those piles goes into our hand and which one into our graveyard. Pretty cool.
Exactly. Then we have Archivist for 4 mana. It's a 1/1 creature. We can just tap it to draw a card. Pretty simple.
Elegant
addition.
Yeah, love this card. Not as much as I love Mercurial Chemistry though. For 5 mana, it's a little bit more expensive. Gives us a 2/3. On top of that, we can pay a blue and tap it to draw 2 cards. That is really insane. Be able to do that every single turn. And additionally, we can pay a red and tap it to discard a card. Then Mercurial Chemistry deals damage to target creature equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost. We have got plenty of 8 and 9 mana converted mana cost cards, so it's going to be doing that much damage to our creature. Pretty much nothing will survive that.
No. Though that was it for our utility cards, so let's take a look at our land distribution.
We divided the lands into 15 islands, 13 mountains, and 10 non-basic lands. First non-basic land is It Guildgate? Comes in tapped, gives us either blue or red.
The next one is pretty much the same, Swiftwater Cliffs. Comes in tapped, but it also gives us a life when it enters.
Yeah. Then we have Caldera Lake. Also comes in tapped, gives us either red or blue, but it deals a point of damage to us. And we can also tap it for a colorless mana.
Then it does not deal damage, of course. So we have Is It Boilerworks? Enters tapped, but we do need to return a land we control to our hand. But after that, it will give us 2 mana, 1 blue and 1 red mana. Just 1 land, 2 mana.
Yeah, it's also very cool that we can actually return a land that we've already tapped to use that turn for mana. Pretty cool. Then we have Desolate Lighthouse. We could tap it for a generic mana, but we can also pay 3 mana, tap it, and then draw a card and discard a card. Good little land selection. Exactly. Card selection, sorry.
Rogue Specialist is the next one. We can tap it to get 1 colorless mana, but we could also generic mana.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Generic.
Yeah. You can also just tap it for 4 mana, and target creature will be unblockable or can't be blocked this turn. Insane, of course, with our big fatties.
Then we have a Vivid Creek. Enters tapped with 2 time counters on it. And we can remove one of those time counters to give us a red mana, and otherwise it'll just give us a blue mana.
The next one is Vivid Crag. Does the same, but then the other way around. It will usually give us red mana. It could give us blue mana 2 times.
Yeah. Then we have Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Comes in, we can tap it, sacrifice it, look for a basic land, and then put it onto the battlefield tapped. And those are our non-basic lands. So let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. This deck plays with a lot of control. It's kind of like Melik in that way, that you're having control over the entire battlefield, but whereas Melik target removes things individually, what Jhoira does is we're going to be wiping the board all the time up until the point where our big fatties come into the battlefield, attack with impunity, with haste. Things trigger when they're attacking. They can do that repeatedly, getting cool effects like drawing cards, Annihilator, people can't attack, exiling things. The variety of effects that you get from our big fatties is also incredibly awesome, on top of the fact that they're just also big fatties. They're 8/8s on top of that, or 6/6 in the air.
True.
Super cool. It's got some card draw. It's also got counterspell. You got a little bit of surprise there. It's got some early blockers or defenders at the beginning of the game. So on turn 2, you usually will have something to defend yourself with. All in all, I think it's a great way to play this deck very defensively and have people empty their hands and then destroying everything that they control. It's also important to remember is that this deck is not built the normal way that a Jhoira deck will be built, and that is with all this land destruction. We could have done that. There are lots of budget cards which can destroy all non-basic lands or can destroy all lands in general of our opponents. But the problem with that is that it's not a lot of fun to play, and it's not a lot of fun to play against. Imagine you suspend 2 fatties, then you say, okay, destroy everybody's lands. Now I get to wait until my fatties come into the battlefield where everybody's still playing 1 land, and then you win the game. Not a lot of fun, but this way, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, what I really like about the deck is at first you will be defensive player, so you will have a defensive playstyle, of course. You get to time stuff the right way, so all will be wiped at the right moment. So your fatties come in, and then you will be the aggressive player. So you will really change role pretty quickly. That's really nice about the deck, and especially because you have a lot of options. Sometimes your suspend, you will remove suspend counter, so you will be faster. Sometimes you have more board wipes. Your opponent just never knows. It has a lot of things it can do against overwhelming decks with a lot of creatures on the battlefield. It's just really nice. Like David just said, the land destruction isn't just really fun. So if you come up with that comment, that's the reason we didn't do it. Exactly.
So it's very common, but remember that when you're the Jhoira player, you maybe don't have a lot of options in the sense of the different kinds of cards that you have at your disposal. It is counterspell, it is wipe, it is big fatties, but what Richard said is very important. You get to choose when those things happen and when stuff comes in. Your opponent doesn't know, because you can remove time counters and choose when you do board wipes, for example. So that gives you a lot of choice, even if the variety of cards is not that much. On top of that, it's also pretty affordable, right?
Yeah, it's just below $30, so this is really easy to buy. We did a calculation of the price of this deck on magiccards.info. We used all the median prices of a lot of sites compared, so you can really buy this deck, including all lands, including the commander, for below $30.
Yeah,
very nice.
And unlike the creatures that we're going to be casting with Jhoira, do not suspend the time that you take in subscribing to us. You got to do that right away. Just press that subscribe button. On top of that, also do that for our Facebook and Twitter if you want to find out a little bit more information about the show. We're going to be posting a lot more behind the scenes thoughts and ideas. We're going to be posting that on Twitter and on Facebook. So if you want to know our thought process, if you want to see what's coming up, then please join us on social media. And Ruud, what is going to be the question of the day for today?
Today's question is going to be a little bit of a multiple choice question, but of course you can come up with any answer you like. And the question is, who wins the most commander games? Is that the player with the most skill in playing, or the most political skill, the most expensive deck he built, or the most synergistic deck he built? You can leave your answer in the comments below this video.
Yeah, well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
And this was Budget MTG Decks.